What's up, everybody? Peter X. This O'Coffer here, doing another episode of the Level Up the Personal Branding podcast, doing another great trio of artists, Isaac Hayes, Teddy Pendergrass, and Barry White. Now, I call these dudes the Three Kings. They all they were balladeers who loved to sing in that lower register. And two of them in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Teddy Pendergrass is not as absolutely crazy that Teddy Pendergrass is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. There's a few major 1970s omissions when it comes to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when it comes to black music from the 70s. And the top of that list is Teddy Pendergrass and the Commodores. But hopefully that will be rectified because, I love the picture. Go on, if you love these three, go on Google and Google. There's a picture there of the Three Kings with Rick James, and they were, I assume they all got along. I mean, Barry, late in their careers, Barry White and Isaac actually did, songs with each other on each other's albums. So, and I've never heard of any, bad blood between Teddy and the other two. So, love these guys, just love them, all three of them, and everybody's trying to sing high, and I decided to try to sing low because I love, and I sing high too. Particularly I have one in my higher register for the first time on this new album I'm working on. But just love all three of these guys. So when we're how they differentiate themselves, even though they got along. I mean, I would call it a friendly competition between them. And Isaac, busted out the first. I mean, Isaac's nickname is Black Moses. And in the early 70s, Isaac was kind of the dude. He was like, right there with James Brown, in that neighborhood. I mean, he wasn't James, but he was, right, under James and popular like that. And of course, Memphis has a long history of, the blues and this influence when it comes to music. And of course, Elvis and all the folks who came, even the country and rockabilly was at Nashville. Memphis influence, when it came to rockabilly. So, Memphis is B.B. King was out of Memphis. So there's a lot, historically, musically going on in Memphis. So, Isaac started off as a session musician. Isaac was a really good keyboardist and piano player. And so he started off as a songwriter with Stax, but when Otis Redding died, I mean, Otis was the big star, and then, the plane crashed and Otis is gone. And so Isaac kind of stepped in to fill that void, and, at Stax. And Isaac was the first to really, really, really do long songs. I mean, Zeppelin started, but, and his first album, Hot Buttered Soul, he did a remake of By the Time I Get to Phoenix, 18 minutes long. And just reading in the last couple years, a music historian talks about how political that was, and just Isaac Hayes's desire and act of taking up space was political in itself. So Isaac did he wrote some of his own music, but he did cover songs. And when Isaac did a cover song, he made it his own, and he really did a good job with it. Just the Way You Are by Billy Joel. I mean, he does his own version. It's just as good. So Isaac has some really good cover remakes of other people's stuff. So, Isaac was mostly balladeer, but he did a little funk as well. But, it's the early 70s, and Isaac shaved his head, and everybody else has afros. And so Isaac, branding-wise, he's always known for that bald head, and he stood out. He often went shirtless, had gold chains. And so in some ways, the hip hop community really kind of borrowed his style. And uh, so Isaac had this really masculine look, and he had this really masculine sounding voice, but he was very tender and sensitive in his songs. And so, I mean, Prince would play with those dualities later, but Isaac sort of in his own way really kind of did that at first. And then the other thing that really set Isaac apart is he had a great guitarist named Charles Skip Pitts, and he played with Isaac well into the 2000s. I don't know. I think I don't know who passed. I'm maybe Skip is still with us. We know Isaac has passed, but what a great relationship those two had. And Skip was an amazing um, guitarist. Yeah. So three good examples of how Isaac used Skip Hicks on guitar is The Look of Love. I think it's off the To Be Continued album, and Do Your Thing, which was on the Shaft album. Of course, that was Isaac's biggest album of all time. And then there's a song on a black exploitation movie soundtrack, Hung Up on My Baby. Now, a lot of people don't know what that song is. Look it up, but it was the sample that was used for Mind Playing Tricks on Me by the Ghetto Boys. And so you want to hear some great funk guitar from Skip Hicks, listen to those three songs there. And, when people talk about great guitarists, they usually think rock or blues, but funk had some really good guitarists, and Skip was one of the best. And Prince is essentially a funk guitarist. But at some point, I'm going to talk guitar and guitarists and try to, and I'll give some of the funk guitarists the love they deserve. And Skip Hicks is one of the best. And he can play guitar with anybody, use the wah-wah a lot more than the, pedal than the rock and roll guitarist. But Skip Hicks is the real deal. So you want to, check those three out I just dropped for you. So next up is Teddy Pendergrass. I'm going a little sequentially here. Teddy started off with Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. And it's interesting because everybody's like, who's Harold Melvin? Because Harold didn't do most of the singing for Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. It was Teddy. And, I was always wondering, like, who is Harold? Or, when I'd hear Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, because all I hear is Teddy Pendergrass. And Teddy was a bad boy. He was, silky smooth music, and he toured with an orchestra. He had a great band. He has one live album, and there's some live sets of him on YouTube. Check him out. His band was good, but he toured with an orchestra. Obviously, Teddy was a sex symbol. And then Teddy was so hot with the ladies that he would do ladies-only shows. So it's interesting because, Teddy had that tragic car accident and was paralyzed. And, Teddy, and his whole, his management and the band and everything, well, they wanted to cross over so bad. And it's interesting because Teddy's accident is at most 18 months before, Michael Jackson kicks the door down on MTV with Thriller, and then Prince, jumps in his little red Corvette and drives on to MTV, with the 1999, his great stuff in 1999. And, the Teddy Pendergrass people are like, oh, we're going to have to change your sound or look. No, I mean, Teddy wouldn't have had to change anything. And it's so tragic that, because, Teddy ended up coming back, in the mid 80s, but he was out of the scene 4 or 5 years. He's paralyzed, he's dealing with all that stuff, and lost his momentum. his paralysis, he was still a great singer, but he wasn't what he was because, his breathing wasn't what it was. He still had a great voice, though. But it's so tragic because, I mean, trust me, if that doesn't happen and Teddy's around when, Michael, and is still in his prime when Michael, kicks the door down, I mean, Teddy's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, no questions asked. But vocally he was smooth and gritty, and Teddy, he nicknamed himself the Teddy Bear. Black Moses for Isaac Hayes, and Teddy Pendergrass is the Teddy Bear. So they right there you got differences in branding, and then you got Barry White. So Barry drops in about the mid-70s. So Barry's interesting. I mean, he's considered a disco artist. He's also considered, a great soul / R&B balladeer. And, he just had that talking voice. And he would, he had that smooth, just kind of deep, rumbling singing voice. All three of them had very distinct, deep singing voices, but in their own way, just I mean, compared to Isaac Hayes in the tradition of Stax was a little unrefined compared to Teddy and Barry, but that's kind of what set them apart. But all three of them were just amazing. So Barry was just a cool cat. I remember watching on YouTube, there's a concert that Barry did. I think it was in England. And, it's the mid-70s, Barry has one of those 70s suits on, and Barry's just chill as I don't know what. It's only 45 minutes long, so it's not the whole concert, but he's walking around in the crowd, cigarette in one hand because it's the 70s and everybody smoked, microphone, and he's just singing his soulful, smooth self and shaking hands with everybody in the crowd. And it's like, I've never seen anybody do that. And just being a man of the people and just out there singing, it was just, man, I just watched that whole concert. It was just kind of, amazing to see. And so, Barry did share the orchestra with Teddy. And Barry was even a little smoother than Teddy, but Barry also brought that four to the floor kind of disco beat to some of his stuff. So he distinguished in that way. So they all had their distinguished between each other and got along, and shaped their own brands in a real unique way. So been looking forward to this one too, because these are three of my favorite, balladeers. And again, I mean, Isaac was a funk dude, and, Teddy did some funk stuff too. And then, Barry, did some stuff in disco. So, just amazing, all three of them. And of course, we haven't even talked about Isaac, going into the, what was it, The Simpsons, where he played this chef? I think it was, and kind of gotten a shot in the arm for his whole career and brand, when he went on The Simpsons. So, yeah, these are my dudes. And they branded well off each other and did well. So thanks for coming through. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. I got 4 albums, about the 5th one's about to drop. I got my music here on YouTube, and all my music is on the streaming channels under the name Exodus. And Peter Exodus Okafor got 2 science fiction fantasy novels, and a novella on Amazon. So check it out. Appreciate you coming through, and see you next episode.